Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmer. The Yankee Institute for Public Policy is a think tank which recommends changes to law and politics in the state of Connecticut. One of its staffers is Megan Portfolio, who writes a weekly blog called the Megan Portfolio. On today's broadcast, I'll talk about something she wrote a few weeks ago about licensing and registration.
To begin with, then, could you tell me how often the blog that you produce at the Yankee Institute comes out? Is it weekly?
Yes, it's every Friday.
Okay, and so we're hard upon another blog, but we're talking primarily about the one that came out at this point in time last week. I have met people before who were registered with their cars in places where they didn't live. But I've never heard of anyone actually choosing to register a vehicle in another state entirely and then attempt to justify the fact that they did it. You wrote about that at the top of this last week's blog post.
Yeah, I worked on a campaign once in one of the cities, and this was years ago. And one of the issues in that city was people that had moved in from other states just not re-registering their cars. They were keeping their older registrations because other states, they either don't have a property tax or it's a very small one, and their insurance rates are lower. So it causes us some headaches in some of these bigger municipalities because they're not adding to their grand list. And I remember back a few years ago, CT News Junkie did a great article on people that were registering their cars up in Maine, and I think they found about 1,600 people that were doing it up in Maine. But then I saw an article come out that, this was a few weeks ago, that Vermont had this loophole where you could literally, you don't even have to go there, you just have to send them a check. Get your car registered. You don't even have to set foot in the state. And one of the stipulations is you have to get your car inspected every year. However, if you don't drive in Vermont, there's really no way to enforce that. And so after reading the article, I contacted their DMV, and they told me that there was 3,629 cars that were registered in Vermont but had Connecticut as their home address. Once that registration runs out, it's going to be on the onus of that Connecticut resident to fill out paperwork and prove that they actually have a tie to Vermont that would warrant them to actually have their car registered up there. So a lot of people are going to be doing what we have to do every year, and that's pay our car tax and our lovely high car insurance rates, and then they can suffer like the rest of us.
Well, it had occurred to me that someone who did that would be obviously doing it for the tax advantage or something related to that, because I can hardly envision anyone who lives outside of Connecticut choosing our state to put their registration down for.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. But in Vermont, so there was a couple different types of reasons for people in Connecticut to register up there. One is if your car is over 15 years old, you don't even have to show a title. So innocent people, not quote unquote innocent, I'm doing air quotes right now, who, maybe have a car that they found in a barn, or, that's just a junk car that they're tinking around with, they don't have to have that registered in the state. They can just go to Vermont. They don't have to show a title. They just have to show a bill of sale. They get their registration. You also don't need to show proof of having a license. So I imagine there are some people in there that maybe have had their license revoked or just don't have a license. You don't have to show proof of insurance. And then one of the other problems is that people were registering their cars up there that were stolen. So Florida had actually figured this out and notified Vermont that they need to buckle down on these Florida people because they were registering stolen cars up there. But then Vermont finally decided to lay the kibosh on it when people were actually going to their DMV and being belligerent to the DMV workers. So they actually had to have police stationed at the different offices, and that's when they said, that's it, July 1st, we're cutting it off. No more of this. We're not going to be the nation's Department of Motor Vehicle anymore.
Speaking of relationships between customers and staff at the DMV, that kind of puts the shoe on the other foot, because usually what you hear about from acquaintances and so on are that you went to the DMV and the staffer was belligerent, but because they work for the state of Connecticut, you can't really do anything about whatever they may have said or done that offended you.
Oh, no, there's a lot of protections for state workers. I will say, in my personal experience, especially the past few years with everything, a lot of the functions being put online, it has gotten a lot better. But a lot better from really, really bad is still, not the best.
Yeah, when it comes to talking with people, let's say like the state of Vermont, for instance, does where you're calling from ring any bells for people up there wondering, why is this woman from Connecticut calling me about this?
I just did it through a Freedom of Information request, so I didn't really have any dialogue with them. They were very responsive. I mean, I think it took them about a week to get me the information. They were super quick with it. Sometimes I wish some of our state agencies could react as fast, because I've had gone months with Freedom of Information requests that had not been fulfilled down here. So I was really shocked when I got the email from them so quickly. I was like, oh wow, and then I was immediately like, oh, now I know what I'm doing for my blog post this week.
Could you tell us just for a moment what sorts of things, perhaps as examples, that might catch your eye like this particular one did?
Well, as my boss says, I have a nose for news. I read so much, and I follow all the social media, so I kind of have a sense of what's interesting. Well, actually, I kind of base it on what aggravates me, because that's kind of why I got started in this whole think tank world anyway, because the government was just always irritating me with different things that they would do. So most of the time I see something and it just aggravates me. I'm like, geez, I have to write about this. I don't want to give it away, but the one I'm working on right now that's coming out tomorrow has to do with free speech at one of our state universities, and it's not in a good way, and that aggravated me. So I'm like, ooh, I got all excited and just started writing.
Are you interested in receiving input from the public, as well as whatever may, let's say, as you said, irritate you personally? If someone is stumbled onto something or a part of something and it hasn't been publicized much and maybe it's bugging them, would you welcome them to contact you at the Yankee Institute to think about looking into it?
100%. That's what we're here for. I mean, we're the eyes, ears, and voice for people that just, are living their daily lives, and we're here, and this is what we do full time. And so, I welcome it. People contact me all the time with different story ideas or just things that I had. One woman who was running it was an event to educate on human trafficking in the state. It was in, I believe, East Haven, and she had organized having the police there, the firefighters there. They were doing a touch a truck. It was a completely innocent event. It was a nonprofit organization doing it, and for some reason, the city officials contacted her and were threatening her and told her that she couldn't hold the event. And all of a sudden, the police and the fire had pulled out, even though they had committed to doing it. So I love when people contact me, because I can't follow everything, but 100%. You can email me at Megan with an H at yankeeinstitute.org, and we love looking into that stuff.
Well, thank you for spending a few moments of your time today. I welcome hearing what you have to say and what you've stumbled upon recently, and maybe, as we say, providing a public service.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I do enjoy doing your show.
You've been listening to a conversation I had recently about Vermont and its DMV policies, which are now changing. For further information about what Megan Portfolio writes about for the Yankee Institute, call us at 860-346-1049. 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer for the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.